Zack Snyder's Rebel Moon is a movie which I have been patiently waiting for. Ever since I first heard about it, around a year ago, I have been intrigued. A film which would rival Star Wars, especially now in the Disney era of Star Wars, I had a lot to be curious about. Of course, would the movie be any good, but also, what does it mean for the future of Star Wars, Disney Plus, Netflix, and just the fact of having another competitor in the sci-fi market? We just had the release of the Rebel Moon trailer, and there is a lot to be excited for. To me, the most important thing to talk about for Rebel Moon, at least now at the start, is that it's being split into two parts, A Child of Fire and the Scargiver, and the two parts will come out just about 4 months apart. Now, I wasn't aware that it was going to be two parts, maybe it was, but I find it very interesting that it's being split into two, and until we know the runtime of each part, we can only guess the reason. Either it was way too long and Netflix didn't want a Snyder Cut length film on their hands, or the other reason is just so it can be a franchise, and if you have two parts, then it is one, and if everyone loves the first part, then 4 or 5 months later, when we get the second one, Netflix will have a whole lot of more viewers. Netflix is also splitting a lot of their shows and their seasons in two parts for releases for that same reason. But if the reason is for this, if that's the reason for the splitting, I do worry a bit, because then when we split a show, it's already edited into episodes, so it doesn't matter if you just stop after the 6th one and then you get the last 4 later. But by cutting a movie in two, when that was never the intention of the writer or the director, that could cause so many problems and possibly just ruin the viewing experience. It is something I'm both excited and worried about. I'd love to have two films, but at the same time, if because they're two films now it's bad. Yeah, but there's a lot more that makes me excited rather than anxious with this. Now, you can immediately tell while watching the trailer that this was originally written as a Star Wars story. We see laser swords, only in red and blue. We seem to see the story of a powerful empire against a group of rebels fighting for the right thing. But luckily, besides the lightsabers, it doesn't feel like a ripoff. For example, we have a few factions of warriors that we see, and I think that's the plot of the movie. And I can't tell which ones are the antagonists exactly, because a lot of them look similar, and I think a lot of them are just the same thing in different uniforms. But while the Empire in Star Wars feels like a big, almighty bureaucracy, here the warriors feel young, destructive, and bloodthirsty. Like the guy who's apparently called Admiral Noble, look at him. He looks young, scrappy, and bloodthirsty, and he seems to be real intimidating and a big threat for our protagonist to face. He seems to be very patriotic, but I also found it really interesting that he is in a relationship. I'm interested to see how it plays out, because the girl also kind of looks like the protagonist. I'm not entirely sure, but at the very least they look similar. And it seems that the most striking shot of the trailer even comes from him, or at least his faction, when we see everyone shirtless, down on their knees, wearing that sack with an eye painted on, and the people with the guns are wearing the same type of armor that Admiral Noble is wearing, so I think that's connected, which just makes them even cooler. Just everything about that faction seems interesting. Another one of my favorite shots is when we saw the soldiers in a more ceremonial uniform, and they all saluted, but it was all out of sync, and that tells us so much about the army. And to me, it seems like just what the First Order should have been in Star Wars, these young people trying to take over the ashes of a fallen empire and need to fight for it, and they quickly gain domination. We do have a synopsis for the film, and that reads, when a colony on the edge of the galaxy finds itself threatened by the armies of a tyrannical regent Bel races, they dispatch a young woman with a mysterious past to seek out warriors from neighboring planets to help them take a stand. Now, it does seem like we will be following two protagonists, or at least one in A Child of Fire and the other in the Scargiver. It seems the main character of A Child of Fire is her, Cora, and it seems like she will be a very interesting protagonist. Again, she reminds me a lot of Rey, which hopefully she'll end up more developed than Rey. She seems to be a very strong character, but hopefully she won't be a Mary Sue. Other character we seem to follow is this mother and a child. Well, I guess that's two characters. The mother is one of the few people we see wielding the lightsaber things, but the more interesting thing is the red, and if she was some sort of Darksider, because again, this was originally Star Wars, that could be something really interesting to explore. We see they have their village burned down, and then the daughter was being kidnapped when that mother was fighting the spider lady. She was kidnapped by the spider lady. I can't tell how this will fit into the bigger story with the mother and the daughter, but I'm very interested in it. There are a lot of other shots in the trailer which I just love, like that cyborg at the start, the robot with the changing colors all around him, and also the girl dating the robot. There are so many visuals which just deserve praise. Also the one with the king. I have no clue how that king is going to play into the story. He seems to be this cocky jerk, but also that feels misleading. So I'm really curious about him. The biggest thing, going back to the start, is what this movie, or these two movies, mean for the future of sci-fi. We have been going through a very rough time in the Star Wars fandom with shows like Obi Wan Kenobi and just having people leave the fandom, and a very hit-or-miss track record with the franchise. It's on shaky ground. I haven't had a chance to watch Ahsoka yet, but we will need a miracle to get Star Wars back to its former glory. And with Disney Plus announcing less Star Wars shows coming out and also the price raise, Disney Plus is definitely going to lose that sci-fi market, and Netflix can come and take it over if Rebel Moon ends up being any good. And Netflix is definitely going to be pushing this as well. If it wants to stick around as a streamer, especially as Stranger Things is about to come to an end, they will need a new franchise, and it seems that Rebel Moon is going to be the franchise they want. I really hope Rebel Moon does well, and that is a good story. I would love a new sci-fi film franchise, and although I really love Star Wars, the only way it's going to be able to get back on its feet is with some really good competition. And from what we do have seen, it does look great. I'm very excited for December 22nd to watch this, and when I do, I'll be covering it here, so make sure to come back when that comes out. Anyways, though, that is all I have to say. Thank you for watching, and what do you think? Are you excited for Rebel Moon? Do you think it will replace Star Wars, or will it just be quickly forgotten? All that and more, make sure to leave in the comments down below. Here is a video breaking down Miguel O'Hara and, more importantly, his speech in Across the Spider-Verse and the ripple effects it has on the previous film. Subscribe to see plenty of more videos covering Rebel Moon, Star Wars, one it's worth talking about, and so much more. I have been Fictional Fanatics. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one, but until then, bye!